Okay, thank you for this opportunity to Hara, to bringing us together, because I really believe that we needed such a free environment to express ourselves in all our fields. Because when we think of the creative environment, we are all surrounded by institutions and a lot of pressure on every kind, particularly in this geography. So I really believe that it's very important. So let me introduce myself briefly. I'm Ayşe Coşkun. I'm an associate professor in the field of industrial design since 25 years. And I have been trained as an industrial design in one of the leading design schools, which is the Applied Art School, which was the continuation of Bauhaus in Turkey. And after my graduation, I felt like it was more object-oriented back in the 90s. And I was a good student. I knew what I wanted. So I was trained as an industrial designer. But then back in the days, there was no internet. There was no network of information flowing so rapidly around. And our only resource that was kind of contemporary were the magazines. And looking at the magazines and looking at what we were doing as designers, I felt that there was a big gap. So the ideation, and conceptual thinking, so the philosophy of why we are doing all these things were kind of big questions, and I couldn't find answers to them in my undergrad studies. So I decided to go to Italy, to the leading design schools, Domus Academy, which was very much about design thinking, design philosophy, so I could get to know the famous designers of the period. Yeah, and then I worked as a designer, and then I decided that I would like to stay in the academia because it was a very reciprocal learning environment where my learning was continuous while I was working. And since then, since 25 years, I'm teaching design studios, and my academic research happened to be, after my PhD, focusing on how crafts knowledge or crafts culture could shape our everyday in today's world. And then it's like, being an academic, I think, is very lovely because you can ask questions freely. And once you get to know all the methodology, particularly being in the creative field and getting to know a lot of international people, so it kind of enabled me to ask questions and find creative answers, doing workshops. So I'm still actively doing a lot of, international projects, workshops, teachings, and collaborations with a lot of colleagues and design schools all over the world. And so I was very much honored to be a part of the exhibition so that I could transfer my questions into rising up other questions, which I think the creative field really needs this. Instead of finding correct answers and saying, yes, this is the answer, we should keep on asking questions. So, and I do really believe that the creative field is a very powerful tool for asking new questions and, trying to find new ways, new connections of people, our being with the physical environment, and as well as creating communities is, I think, very, very important. So the reason why I'm here is because I was a part of this wonderful exhibition and this wonderful creative bright minds and souls. And today I'm honored to be here with my colleague Nicoline, and we have been collaborating. We made some calculations just before we start the talk, and we are collaborating. I think we know each other since 15 years. And so I will give the word to Nicoline to introduce herself. And then we will go on the talk with questions and answers and with some very brief examples of what we do in the creative field.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for inviting me, Ayşe, and also I'm really happy to be here in this beautiful place. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm an art historian, and I've been working for several musea in the Netherlands as a researcher. Besides that, I'm for more than 20 years connected with Design Academy Eindhoven, and I used to be there for more than 15 years, head of Department Forum. And in that position, I initiated many workshops with students all over Europe, and especially also in Turkey. My department focused on the cultural and social context of design. So it was not so really about design, but more for what kind of world do you want to design. And in my team I had a philosopher, a cultural anthropologist, documentary makers, anything but designers, because I think it's really important for young designers that they learn to look at the environment and learn more about the context for the world they want to design for. And in that role I also initiated many international workshops, because I think it's so important for young designers to develop a more global view and get in contact with other cultures. And that's, in that position I also worked with Carnegie, the university where I met Ayşe, but also other universities in Istanbul like Mimar Sinan, Bilgi, İTÜ. We popped over from different universities also to see different views there, because everybody had a different approach. And our work, we worked also for the Design Biennale, we had exhibitions, we had documentaries made, and we also got a connection with many craftspeople in Istanbul, and that was so rich for us, because in the Netherlands crafts are almost died out. It's not possible to find craftsmen anymore, and since here it was still alive, so we connected these young students with craftsmen to see if we could develop a common language. So it was not that we wanted to safeguard the old techniques, but we wanted to try to transform them into modern design and see if together they could develop a new design, new way of working, so that we could can safeguard these old techniques for the future, or safeguard, make them future-proof is maybe a better way to put it. Yeah, safeguard is an old-fashioned word, so you have to integrate it into new ways of thinking, so that they will still can be used in the future projects. So yeah. I think that's very short.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, well, I think it's also one of the questions that I also ask myself, and when I encounter young generations of creative people, I mean, we are in the era of the digital world and the information era, and I mean, particularly the generative AI getting over and taking over. The question I would like to ask also to Nicoline and to myself, why are we still after storytelling and narration and after people? I mean, because I know that there's a lot of also criticism when we talk about crafts, or when we want to interact with the crafts culture or the traditional crafts people. Are we romanticizing a nostalgia? I mean, I'm asking this question also to be a little bit provocative, because this is not what we're aiming at. And I don't think this is the correct way how we should approach to the craft culture today. So what would your answer be? Like, we are in a digital world, really totally immersed into it, but then also the work here, also our research as creatives, we are seeing it as a process. We know that there's other values in that, rather than safeguarding a person maybe in a museum, because we know that crafts and all these creative practices cannot be preserved in a museum. I mean, you can't keep people in a museum, or you can't freeze people in books and stories. So that how could we create a kind of a creative practice, integrating all kinds of disciplines, as you mentioned, and as your practice in the forum in the Design
Yes.
Academy, so that, you know, we safeguard, but not with policies, or everything is written, probably. Theoretically, we know how to do everything, but we know that it never reflects into daily life and in real life. So how about these creative practices that we are, you know, embedding, or...
It remains difficult, because you don't want to paternalize, you don't want to have a position like that. So I think the only way is really to let these young designers to get in contact with the other cultures, and let them work together. Yeah, that's also part of our educational system. when students start in the first year at Design Academy Eindhoven, they have to get in touch with ceramics, with all kind of crafts techniques, because we think that maybe they will never touch it again, and maybe they will only use digital ways of designing. But if you don't have the feeling for material, if you don't have the tactility, if you don't know something about that, it's very difficult to design something which is future-proof. And also you design for the community. And if you are not part of a community and you are just only digitalizing things, then it's really difficult to think about the community and to design for a world which is more open. So that's, we think, is part of the education as well.
Yes, of course, and I think it's also, we're transferring knowledge from generation to generation. That's also one of the issues, because when we first met, I think it was 2011, and when we heard that the famous Design Academy, I don't know, for those who are familiar with the Academy, would know that it's one of the pioneering design schools, but it's not only about design, it's art, anthropology, philosophy, and a lot of making. I mean, I have visited the Academy several times, and they have huge workshops which are the size of a factory here in Turkey. So it's all about making, and it's basically thinking with hands.
Yeah,
so
we even have a studio, thinking by making. So thinking hands is really our motto. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we heard that the Design Academy was coming to Turkey, and my former university where I worked for 16 years is in the historical peninsula, and then when we heard like you were with 20 plus students coming from the Netherlands,
27 for the first time.
Many of you know that we hardly go and look to the back street craftsperson or somebody who is just knitting or somebody who is just stitching something. It is so much neglected in our modernized, let's say, design and art education that we kind of, degrade it, not give it the correct value of what it is, or we don't look at it with a curiosity. And then so we were like, okay, they're coming, and what can we do? We always tend to take everyone to the most contemporary museums we have. But they were into the back streets of Jibali and exploring whatever was there. I mean, not only to a certain person, but feeling the air, the smell of a certain place. Maybe a repair guy who's repairing shoes for the last 50 years of his life.
Yeah, but I just want to say
no,
that I know what you're referring to. We had different projects with the students. They could pick a team in the Netherlands, and they had to do research there, and then they came over here. And one group decided, okay, the repair community is almost gone in the Netherlands. If somebody is broken, you throw it away and you buy something new. And they thought, okay, we bring broken stuff to Turkey, and then we go and search for people who can make something out of it. So that was such a great project, because in that way they got connected. Okay, they started in a back street, and then they asked, okay, does somebody know maybe somebody who can make this? And then so they got further and further into, they got knowledge, and they built a whole group of people around them, and it was such a beautiful project.
Yeah, but for us, with reference to the Netherlands being more into the Orient, and then for us these are like, are they really interested in tailoring or shoemaking or shoe repair, whereas all our students were more into digital world, computers, highly skilled renderings and all that. So it was it gave us a balance, all these people are coming from the Netherlands, and as you mentioned that, certain things are disappearing in the Western world because of overly industrialized production or knowledge, or that we're losing all this culture of connected communities via making or repairing, etc. So it kind of opened up a lot of questions and answers together. And since then, it's like we're trying to build these intercultural workshops and projects. And we know that when we're looking at the crafts culture, this is also a little bit of a critical perspective, and that when we are kind of romanticizing the crafts, we should not forget that, because I was also doing a research on the the last living craftspeople, the jewelry makers of the Grand Bazaar. I was there for 2 years. And we know that we are kind of, yeah, they are so valuable, they are. But then I came across with a younger generation of jewelry makers who hated them. Because there was no space for anything new. I mean, crafts, the traditional crafts practice, on one hand, is of course, it's a lot of skills, but it's doing the same thing and it relies on repetition. And if you are a master and apprentice, usta-çırak ilişkisi, that particular relationship in the crafts culture, which means you are silent for the first 3 years of your life at the age of 12. And you have no place for any expression. I mean, you are not allowed to be at the bench. You're not considered anyone. You're just bringing in stuff, going back and forth. And then I came across with a lot of talented people who were informally educated from that system, but they also wanted to break that system. So it's actually, when we talk about the traditional and the contemporary, we see that there are also very opposite values in both. So whereas the traditional is the repetition of the same skill, which makes perfection, which looks for perfection, whereas in the contemporary, we don't aim at the perfect result, but we focus on the process. So it's more process-oriented, it's more experiential, it's more experimental. And we know that Design Academy, you are very, very good in that, because there's a very free environment where each individual is not aimed at being shaped.
No.
But they find their own voices.
They find their own voices and they have to reflect. It's very important, and we focus, as you say, on the process and not the outcome. During the education, it's really, really about asking questions, why, and why. And we say the end product is not important, but the process is important. So you have to evaluate yourself as well. Why do I want to make it in this way or that way? And as you say, perfection, it came in mind one of the latest graduation project. It was last year, which was a series of cups that were 3D printed, so very modern technique, but the form was based on experimenting with clay and glaze that was a little bit broken. So the form related to experimenting with clay and new glaze techniques, but the end product was in 3D printing. So it's a new technique, but also integrated with crafts like experiment. So sometimes we have a transformation in that. I should say, yeah.
And I think that it's more about the attitude. I mean, craft is more an attitude.
Yes.
So it's like when a craftsperson becoming a craftsperson or a master, it's trial and error for a long while, but then the outcome, until it's accepted by the quality-wise accepted by the master, it is a big issue. Yeah. But the new contemporary ways of the creative practices focus only on the trial and error, because sometimes you learn from the error. Yeah. And it's more of a learning process than giving a solution to a question, I guess.
Approach in our academy is errors don't exist. You have to learn from your failure, and failure, we don't, it is not failure. Failure can bring something else, so use it. And that's, I think, another way of approaching something. But that leads to a really original projects. So yeah.
Yes. So I think this formula of the Design Academy, where I learn a lot from their projects and our collaborations, I think it's like a melting pot of creativity, where we have the interpretation aspect, which is abstraction and interpretation. I really do believe that is the core of bringing a new language, or in search of a new language. independent from which field of design you are in. I mean, because we no longer take design as a service. I mean, we talk about interior, but we have all these colors here. So it's kind of, I think this environment also enables us to question that we're kind of looking for this connection.
Yeah.
And we no longer have these seats that are, you know, the ideal way, but then this opens up new languages of interacting, new languages of communication. And
a new approach to design as practice, because we in our school we don't have departments anymore for interior design or graphic design or furniture design. We have several studios, and it is more about how do you look at design in the context. So do you want an industrial approach, or do you want a handmade approach, or do you want what kind of approach is interesting at this moment? So the whole basic idea of separate interior design, graphic design, and it's long gone.
Yeah, it's more research based.
Yes.
So I think in this aspect, the creativity itself, or the curiosity of doing errors and making mistakes and being process oriented, is somewhat, it's like a research field. So I really do believe that they're like cultural laboratories. I mean, also looking at life on the street and then bringing in new materials and questioning things and trying to make things interpretation or abstraction, without focusing on what the others will think.
Yeah, and wondering,
I think this
and
is also
being
very important.
Curiosity and wonder, and use whatever is there at that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So, shall we talk a little bit about the projects that you have done earlier?
Maybe you
want to start with this, or I want to ask you more about the Gaziantep project first?
Okay. Gaziantep, that was a few years ago, before the earthquake, of course. We went to Gaziantep also with a small group of, not students, but alumni. So there were teachers already from the Design Academy. And we gave a workshop called Food Craft, and the idea was to work together with Syrian students and Turkish students, because at the border there is so much discrimination and there's so many problems, and we thought, okay, if we let them work together, maybe we can find a common ground, a common language whatsoever. So we called it Food Craft, and there were 20 students that wanted to work with us. And we asked them to bring something related to food. That was the beginning. So that could be anything. That could be a spoon, recipe, something edible, whatever, something related to food. And then we had a group of 10 Syrian students and 10 Turkish students. And they were separated. They were really sitting with the group together, so not integrated at all. And we asked them to tell, they had a 5-minute presentation in which they could explain why this object that they brought was so important for them. And then at the end of all the presentations, the group spirit was totally changed, because what happened, they had not all exactly the same stories, but they were so basically the same, and they were at that moment talking about food and talking about their heritage. Seemed that they were so much in common, so that was a good kick-off for the group. And then we talked some more. We did some field trips, and the idea was that they tried to design something what was close to their cultural heritage. And I'll give one example of a Syrian girl. She liked to work with crochet, and there was also a group of students that they wanted to collaborate with furniture makers. And we asked them to develop a large crochet needle. Is that the word? The tool where you make your... I don't know the word.
It's called in Turkish,
A really enlarged one, so that she could work in a totally different way. And
it was out of wood.
It was out of wood.
She had it made in wood, not the tiny ones in metal, but she had it particularly made for the work.
In wood, and since we did also these field trips, we visited a textile factory. They were also, of course, interested in waste and sustainability. So at one of the factories, we collected waste material, otherwise thrown away, and she started to crochet with this enormous tool and the waste. So, and she made bags of it. So, and later they were not really produced, but as an example to work in a different way. She was really happy with the end result anyway.
Yeah, and I think it's also a way of narrating one story.
Yeah.
So it's like the artifact and the process of doing it connects, people to one another. So it also creates a connection with the geography and the place itself. And then that artifact is a kind of a new tool to start up different dialogues.
Yes, and also
so it's also like a circular thing that you start with one thing and then you expand it, enabling to question other things.
Other things, and it made also a connection within the group, and that was for me also such a wonderful outcome, because in the beginning they were really, really separated, and the end of the project they were really integrated, and they have still a WhatsApp group, and they are still texting each other, and they are still developing designs together. So for me, that was I was really happy with the outcome. Yeah. And I see this as a format which we can use also in other situations, of course.
Yes.
Because this was one-time workshop, but we can use this format, of course, also in other situations, I hope.
You can take this as a principle and then apply it to different geographies with different groups of people and different groups of.
And you can use the locality
practices.
And then you can use the locality and the object that are there to create new projects.
Yeah, and then coming to İznik, this İznik pottery is very famous, and then it's like a 600-year of traditional expertise of the Ottoman period. But we know how disconnected we are from that world, because we don't use pottery any longer in our homes, and so it kind of lost its sense of everyday. Which becomes heritage, but then it's also like how we perceive heritage as something to be preserved in a museum, detached and isolated from everyday and everyday life, and that that traditional thing has to be repeated. But then we don't even have the same chemicals, dyes and the chemicals, the powder that existed 600 years ago. The atmosphere is not the same. No. So it's like, researching for the exact same repetition is also a kind of a nostalgic thing. But then, again, interpretation, abstraction, and this new way of asking questions creates all these projects. And every time I talk about, heritage and innovation and heritage and something novel, I always give the example, which is an outcome of this workshop that you're going to talk about now. And it was also very, surprising, not for me, but for my discipline and my world, that again, a group of Dutch designers, a Dutch design school, and they are now going to İznik Foundation with a group of students, and they're going to spend some time there, and then they're going to come up with new projects.
Yeah.
So, how was that experience?
Yeah, that was not the intention, by the way. We were invited by the İznik Foundation to do a workshop there with Kiki van Eyck, which is an alumnus from our academy. She led the workshop. And the idea was to give our students more insight in the techniques of İznik painting. So we went there, and as you can see here, we had a beautiful working space, and the students got lectures from scholars specialized in ISNIC technique. We did excursions around to give them some of other inspiration from nature, for example. Back home in the Netherlands, they already did research on coloring, on themes, on ornaments, etc. And then they worked in the studio in ISNIC. And maybe
for how long?
It was only, we had only 1 week, so it was a really short period of time.
But they slept there, so it was like also like a community.
Yeah. So they worked at late at night. They rose very early in the morning. They wanted to experience it all, and we had a wonderful time there. We were so happy because also we ate there. We were there all the time together.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
So they experiment with colors because, of course, our students didn't want to use the traditional colorings. They wanted to experiment with different way of approaching. And the crafts ladies that were painting and were helping them, they were a bit,
intimidated?
Yes, no, you have to mix it in this way because this is the traditional way. You have to work in this way. No, our students said we want to try this way. So it was it was a bit of
tension.
A bit of tension,
that's the tension of the traditional way of repetition of the same colors and same patterns, whereas the novelty comes from trying out other ways.
Yeah, so this in the bit, but I think it was only the first day and a half, but. Along the week, the crafts ladies, they got fun in a bit stepping aside their traditional way of working. So they liked the students, and it was before Google Translates, because so we had really difficulty with talking to each other. But anyway, we found a way, and it was really so.
Sorry, I just would like to add that it's. Because when we are trying to build some workshops together, the Netherlands and Turkey, the pottery is one of the common things we have.
Yeah.
They have the Delft blue and we have ISNIC. So it was also like a different geography of knowledge coming here to learn the friendship of 100 of years, but still, the Delft blue is still alive. There are still a lot of, contemporary designers, artists, and also traditional craftspeople still keeping it alive. Yeah. And then, coming here, and then where we have the craftspeople, it's, I think, only reduced to repeating patterns. We no longer talk about the shape of the pottery, but it was more on, superficial level, which was 2D rather than 3D, right? Yeah. So, sorry to interrupt, just wanted to add this.
But maybe you can, So I don't know if it's clear for everybody to see, but the traditional way to paint on a tile or whatever surface is to pinpoint the ornaments, and then you blue charcoal, and then you have the lines ready, and then you can
with powder. They don't design on it on lines, but they just put the points as powder.
As powder, yeah. So then you have the lines, and then you put the paint very, very careful within the lines. And our students were told that that was the way to do it, and that was the tradition. So our students, of course, didn't want to do it that way. So they used the same technique this is the traditional tulip for ISNIC, and they made a sort of same abstract flower detail, but then with they used the lines with the charcoal next to it to emphasize that they didn't want to stay within the lines, but they wanted to do it in a different way. And
like a shadow or like a layer?
No, it was not like a shadow, because that's too obvious.
Okay, sure.
It was really to express, okay, this is the technique. Within the lines, we do it in a different way.
Okay.
And with the technique of the pinpoint charcoal technique,
blowing,
blowing. So this is the end product of the vase they made. Where you can see it has the sort of touch of the Isnik decoration, but then in a totally different way. And I think it's a wonderful example of how the new approach of young designers can, together with this old crafts technique, can lead to a new object and a new way of looking. And that's I wish we could.
How were the comments of the traditional craftspeople, the ladies?
They liked it very much.
They have seen the final product, right?
Yes.
And what was their impression?
They liked
and the
it
comments?
very much. They liked it very much. Yes. Luckily.
Yeah, that's a big thing. I mean, it's like, if they are happy or not, because it's difficult for them.
Yes, but these crafts ladies, they were also in the process, so they grew. These crafts ladies were in the process, so they grew with the students. So it was also in the collaboration together that I can imagine that some of the ladies that weren't involved, maybe they had a different, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Just for the last words, just to round up. Maybe we can talk about your last experience in Évora in Portugal, and then I would like to again connect that to my last experience in Italy, and then maybe we can have some space and time for questions.
Évora is just a few weeks ago. That was a different. We didn't work with craftspeople, but it was a new way of working with bachelor and master students from Design Eindhoven, and a University of Portugal and a University of Madrid. And the workshop was called Design as Ethnotourism, because Évora will be the cultural capital in 2027, cultural capital of Europe. And sometimes that will lead to an invasion of tourists, and craftsmen and artists are not always happy with this. Because people will come, maybe buy something, will go out, and they are left with nothing but chaos. And we thought, okay, maybe we can ask our students to look, what is tourism? What is the cultural heritage of Évora? What is, besides all the obvious things, maybe important? So they went on in the streets as well, and they collected stories. They talked with craftsmen. They talked with artists, and they tried to find a way to collect stories and present that to the Committee of Cultural Capital to look at heritage and give room to the real craftsmen and artists, what they want. And since we work together with Portuguese and Dutch and Spanish students, the Portuguese students could translate for the Dutch and the Spanish. So we also had a connection with the local community immediately, and I think that's a really good way of working, because then you have a fresh view, you have a different view from students, and maybe that can lead to a different approach, and we can play a role in in the coming years for this preparation of the cultural capital.
Yeah. So I just would like to connect this, just giving a last example of, I think crafts is a ritual in itself, and then for a continuation into it's like how you said it, the future. You used a very good expression, future safe.
Future safe. Yeah.
It's like, so that they don't diminish, but they somehow transform into something else, which speaks a totally new language in this time era. Last year I was a part of another European Union Erasmus project, and we were in Italy in a middle-aged 1500, a village from a 1500. It's called Bevagna. It's in the middle of Italy. And every year they do this 2-week activity, the whole village, It's called Mercato delle Gaite, which is they revive a 1600-year crafts market made exactly the same identical way how it was done between the years 1512 and 15, I think, 70. It's like there's a very academic time span, and there are 4 different geographical groups of people in that little very town. And what they do is every year, from generation to generation, I mean, there are kids of 6, 7 years old, and there are all the seniors of the village. What they do is particularly the workshops are totally alive. So they do beeswax, candle making, they still do silk, just like we do in Bursa. And all the food, they do a lot of gastronomical experiments, but they relate it always to the historical recipes. So it's like they open up taverns, and then you can visit all the workshops. All the costumes have to be made according, but it doesn't look like Disneyland. I mean, the most powerful thing is everything is genuinely made, because also the textiles or the yarns they use, all the fabric they weave, are done accordingly. And at the end of these 2 weeks workshop, let's say, so they do leather workshops, they do shoes, they cook, and everything has to be accordingly. And there's a very high quality academic jury. Every year they come and they award one of the groups who does the best performance. This is just 2 weeks a year. The rest of the year, there's nothing going on in this village. But this is not a touristic activity. I mean, they do it for themselves so that they can connect the generations, but they do it through the crafts knowledge, so that, to be able to continue doing something new, you have to know how shoes were made back 500 years ago in that same village, with, rooting it to that crafts generation, but then still giving space for the younger generations so that they know and they can interpret and they can, come up with new ways of continuing that, which is not a repetition, but which is more about abstraction and more about interpretation from a very creative perspective. So I think it's very inspiring also to see all these examples and share all this knowledge. So I think if we have a couple of minutes for comments or any questions, we'll be delighted, because then our time is up, I guess. Sorularınız, yorumlarınız varsa, İngilizce konuşmak zorunda değilsiniz. Ben tercüme edebilirim. Rahat olun lütfen. Yoksa günün devamında güzel diğer etkinliklere geçebiliriz o zaman. Thank you so much, Nicoline. Tabii, buyurun.
Bütün bu farklı uygulamalar, farklı tekniklerden sonra sergiyi nasıl bulduğunu merak ediyorum.
With all these experience of yours, with all these different methods and materials, your comments about the exhibition up there. We have here.
I will give, but I have to look quietly, because we came here and we had to arrange it, so I didn't have time to look at it. But I will tell it to you later. Yes.
So there are different techniques, methods,
yes.
and materials.
Yeah. I would love to give some people, yes, but later. I have to have time to look at it. Sorry.
Tabii.
Ben bir şey merak ediyorum. Design Akademi. Tasarımdan bahsediyoruz yani. Tasarım pratiği olarak ele alıyoruz. Burada da bir sanat pratiği olarak görüyoruz sergide ya da hani. Burada şey merak ediyorum. Tasarım olarak takı, sanatçı olarak takı dediğimizde ne düşünüyoruz?
Okay, I mean, the academy is more related to the culture of design, whereas in this exhibition we have more artistic productions. And when we think of jewelry, how would you relate or how would you condition jewelry as an art piece or jewelry as a design? Could you say something about that?
I think both ways. Yeah, if we don't have really students that are specialized in jewelry, but sometimes they make things that you can use as jewelry. So it's also, I think, it's intertwined.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Sir?
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Çok teşekkürler.
thank you.
Keyifli bir gün dileriz.